We heard from Egyptian negotiators that there would be a deal by the end of this week that's just passed, by yesterday, in fact, and there has been no deal. And I think that's why we heard that threat from Israel, which has been sitting waiting to hear what Hamas has to say for a week now. So I think that's been the reasons, tactical as well, for the threat to go into Rafah within a week if Hamas doesn't declare yay or nay one way or the other. But we are seeing some movement this weekend. In addition to the Hamas delegation, we see a delegation from Qatar, who were a negotiator previously, are not any longer, but they've stepped back into the frame. We see the head of the CIA, Bill Burns, he's also in Cairo this weekend. And we've heard from one interesting Palestinian source suggesting that Hamas will accept a ceasefire deal this weekend. And the general consensus seems to be that for phase one, that is the release of these 20 to 30 Israeli hostages in return for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, that phase there's general agreement on. It's what happens next. It's what happens in phase two and phase three that there isn't agreement on. Israel wants to reserve for itself the right to continue this war. Hamas wants this war, which it began, it must be said, to end. So all of those things are interesting in light of this one source only Palestinian report from East Jerusalem saying that what the Hamas is now asking for is a set of guarantees from the US that the third phase will see the end of this war. So all of that is a pessimistic, optimistic, realistic assessment of where we're at right now.
Yeah, and if a deal is not reached, Israel threatened a ground invasion on Rafah. The U.S. warned Israel that would be unacceptable. This would clearly be a much worse situation. Are these threats and warnings just tactics to seek leverage, or could they actually play out?
They are definitely tactics to seek leverage, but they could also play out. We do know that what the US has said is that it will not, it does not approve of an Israeli military ground operation in Rafah if there's no provision made for civilians. So Israel has presented plans for civilians, move them, tents where they could be moved to, and the US still isn't satisfied with those plans, but those plans are in hand. You know, that process is beginning, and I've heard Israeli military analysts saying that process should have been begun. If you really want leverage, you've got to begin. So that's one aspect. The other aspect that I think is worth talking about is whether this would actually advance Israel any. And I've heard a number of Israeli soldiers, ex-military, current military, saying that if Israel does, what's crucial for Israel is actually what's known as the Philadelphia corridor, the area between Gaza and Egypt. And that's where most of the smuggling takes place. If you control that, you control the entry to Gaza. Rafah is there, but controlling Rafah, if you then only leave, as Israel has done in the north, with no plan for someone else, no plan for an alternative political power in Gaza, these military analysts say, what would be the point of that? So all these things in the mix with that response with this proposal for a Rafah invasion.